Record. Hi, and welcome to the new Selling of Sales podcast. I'm your host, Marty Holmes. Our goal is to showcase many of the great talents found in professional sales and sales education. We're dedicated to changing the perception of professional sales and determined to raise awareness of this great career. Join us as we chat with a variety of people with interesting stories who are helping SEF to elevate the sales profession. And so today, my guest is Rob Stenberg. Rob teaches communication, storytelling, and connective listening to companies and individuals interested in increasing their ability to influence, engage, lead, and sell. And he is the co-founder of Story Seekers, working with both profit and nonprofit organizations. Rob is actually a graduate magna cum laude from the College of St. Scholastica. He has degrees in management and marketing. But Rob says, don't be too impressed. Some people follow a 4-year plan and some a 5-year plan to graduate from college. And Rob was on what he calls the 33-year plan. So we're going to, yeah, it was great. We're going to continue our theme today, going from our first podcast, discussing more about storytelling. And this episode is called The Secret Sauce of Storytelling. So welcome, Rob. It's great to have you.
Thank you, Marty. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing that we're doing to help people understand how important storytelling can be. And so my first question, Rob, is why do you think storytelling is so important to the sales profession?
You know, as human beings, we really are hardwired for story. And that's why I think it's so important when you're trying to connect, engage, influence another human being. And we have story hardwired into our brains. If you think about it back thousands and thousands of years ago, before the spoken word, right? And you think of your history class. I don't know if you remember history class. You'd be paging through the history book, and you'd see the cave paintings, right? The paintings on the cave walls, and depicting stories of great hunts and great events that happened to that tribe before the spoken word. So story even predates the spoken word. That's how hardwired it is. That's how long it's been that we have been predisposed to storytelling. And there is just simply nothing that moves people. The closest or the shortest point between two people is a story. In fact, I think it's the only path between two people is a story. So we're hardwired for storytelling. And if you can tell great stories as a salesperson, you can connect, you can gain trust and gain rapport much, much quicker.
Yeah, building that connection is so important, especially in today's world where a lot of the sales calls are being done virtually by necessity. So I had never really thought about cave paintings in the way that you just described them, although I've been fascinated with petroglyphs for quite some time. Again, telling stories. Many times they can't figure out what it is they're trying to say. But yeah. That's really interesting. So, like I said, we're going to talk more about how stories can help you make a connection. What do you suggest? How do you advise someone to begin to figure out their story and their company's story?
That great question. And those are two very distinct stories. And at the same time, you can meld those stories together. Mm-hmm. So the first story that we teach in our workshops is called the Who Am I story. You're asking about yourself. And that's usually a story that might be told a little bit later in the customer's buy cycle. Maybe after they've gotten to know you just a little bit. And then all of a sudden they're asking themselves, okay, who's this person sitting in front of me? Do I trust them? I don't care about your product at this point. I don't care about your company at this point. Don't tell me about your big customers because I really don't care. But I want to know about you. Can I trust you, the person sitting here in front of me? And that's where the Who Am I story really does come in. Mm-hmm. So you tell them a little bit about yourself. You tell them how you ended up working for your company. You tell them that some of your journey to where you are. And the thing that most people want to stay away from, which is, I think, a mistake, is the struggles that you've gone through to get to where you are today. Think about any movie, think about any play, any book you've read. If you think about them, where is most of the time spent in your favorite movie? It's in the struggle, right? They introduce the characters in the beginning and then they get right into that struggle. And 90% of that film is in the struggle before it gets to a turning point of the movie and then a resolution. So don't be afraid to show a little bit of vulnerability and to go first with it. Say, hey, I've made some mistakes or I've done this. Now, again, you don't need to go into great gory detail. Just, hey, I made a mistake here. I made a mistake there. I bounced back from it. Here I am at this company. And then now they say, now in the prospect's mind, they're saying, okay, this person gets me a little bit. They get me in some of my challenges. I get them. I trust them. I like what they're saying about themselves. And they've shown me that they have at least some character and sounds like they've got some competence. So now what about the company? So now you would say, now here's, I work at ABC company. This is why I love working here. This is where the company started. And again, most companies, same thing. They want to avoid telling people about the struggles that the company went through. And again, I think that's a huge mistake because we don't want to come across as being perfect. Just simply because Marty, how many people do you know and how many companies do you know that are perfect?
None. Not a one.
So, yeah, if we come across as being perfect and we have no challenge, we've never had any challenges, we've never had any problems, the client knows you're not being truthful.
Right.
So now what happens to the trust factor?
It goes away.
It goes away. Or at least it takes a big hit. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I used to work for a company where we changed their company story. They were a very innovative company. They were first in their marketplace in a lot of different areas and a lot of different new technologies in that market vertical. And the story we told is, hey, we were first with this, with this, with this, with this, with this, with this. And we changed that story to say, yeah, we were the first to market with this particular product back in the 1970s, but holy cow, what a struggle it was. It was this struggle and that struggle. And the owner had a second mortgage out on his house. And I mean, nobody knew who the product, it was such a brand new, innovative market, new to the market type of a product that nobody had ever heard of it. And so here are some turning points in that company story. And we talked about some of it. And then here we are today, we're still innovative. And it just changed the whole feel of the company story. So it's very important in both your who am I story and your company story to say, hey, we're not perfect. We've made mistakes. I've made mistakes. This is how I got here. And this is why I work at this company. And this is what the company's all about.
It's interesting. I think people are afraid to show any vulnerabilities and in a business relationship, especially. And so telling the struggles, it's showing vulnerability. And I'm thinking that's probably something people have to learn. They just don't naturally go into their own, even surface level personal struggles. Like you said, don't get into the gory details, but let people know, here's where we are, but here's where we've come from, or here's where I am, but here's where I came from. It's fascinating. Yeah.
I know you talked to Mike Bosworth, and in his book, What Great Salespeople Do, there's a story in there of a mentor of his by the name of Bob Papalorian. And Bob Papalorian would test some of these theories out on people in certain situations. And there's a story in the book, it's great. It's about Bob going to a parent-teacher meeting, right? And there's a bunch of other parents there, and they're having coffee and cookies and stuff like that. And Bob would go in and start talking to other parents. And of course, what kind of stories did he get from other parents? Well, it was all about how great their kids were. So he decided to try something a little bit different. He went to the next parent-teacher association meeting and he started talking to other parents, and parents were talking about how great their kids were again. And So somebody asked him about his kids. He said, well, I have 5 kids, one of each. He'd start them out with a little humor, and then he'd say, I got 5 kids, one of each, and chuckle. And the first 4 kids are great. Academically, they do very, very well. A couple of them do very, very well athletically as well. But that 5th child, oh my goodness gracious, I'm pulling my hair out. I don't know what to do with my 5th child. They're getting straight C's and D's. They got picked up for shoplifting last week. 4 weeks ago, they got pulled over for speeding. They even got arrested for shoplifting. I'm just having such a problem with that 5th child. What kind of stories do you think Bob got?
Oh, I'm sure that he got advice. My kids the same way, this and this and this. Everybody started opening up about all of the problems or challenges they had with their own children. Yeah,
absolutely. But he had to go first, right? Somebody had to go first. Oh yeah, he gets stories just like, oh my goodness, my kid must be hanging out with your kid. Geez, I'm having the same problems, right? So it was really interesting, the stories and how people would open up once they were given the opportunity to open up. And you have to give your clients that opportunity. If you want to find out what the problems are, the challenges are of your prospective client, and you're coming across that you're perfect, your company's perfect, do you think they're going to want to admit any type of problems?
No, absolutely not.
So
that's a really great point. That's a great point. Yeah. Yeah. So, one of the things that we were going to discuss today was your secret sauce. You call it the secret sauce of storytelling. So let's go over there for a minute. And
Sure.
I know you're anxious to reveal your secret sauce.
Storytelling, when you craft a story, we teach in our workshops, there are 4 different elements within a story. So you have the setting, and if you, again, think of any movie, book, play you've gone to or read. So you've got the setting, where it introduces you to the characters, the scene where the whole event is starting, right? You have the setting, then you have the complication, which we've talked about. Those are all the challenges. Then you have that turning point, right? So it's an arc, it's a story arc. So you have the setting, the complication, the turning point, and then the resolution, which is where the story ends. And if you think about any movie, okay, it takes place here. Here's all the complications. Think of a rom-com, right? A romantic comedy. Starts here. They have all these complications. They meet on Valentine's Day at the top of the Empire State Building, and then the last scene of the movie is, it says 1 year later on the bottom of the screen, and they're pushing a baby carriage down the road, right? So you have that arc. So that's the story arc, and there's emotion with each of those that you want to include in your story when you're crafting that story. But the real secret sauce that we teach in our workshops is to use that same story framework as a listening framework. Only 2% of the people in the United States have had any type of formal training on how to listen.
That's a really good point. And that's one of the quote unquote soft skills.
Yeah, I wish we'd stop calling them soft skills and start calling them human skills, right?
Because great
that's
point.
What they are. They're skills about being a human being and listening. If you want to influence somebody else, don't talk. Listen. I mean, there's the old saying, right, that God gave us 2 of these and 1 of these, and they should be used proportionately, right? So you could be listening twice as much as and salespeople hear that all the time, but we get uncomfortable with silence. We need to get comfortable with silence as salespeople, but that story framework as a listening tool, and for students, this is huge for students. And here's what I used to talk to a class here at the University of Minnesota Duluth. Every year, the professor there would ask me to come in and talk to his students about the sales profession, similar to what we're doing here, only live. And here's what I would suggest that they do as they were getting close to graduation. Research a number of companies that you would like to work for, okay? Contact their let's say you're going into marketing, contact their chief marketing officer, contact somebody, director of marketing, director of sales, whatever department you're looking, or whatever your niche is. Call them up, get through the gatekeeper, which I don't like that term either. Get through,
Yeah.
tell the executive assistant or whoever you're talking to who you want to talk to. And if they ask why, you tell them that you would like to get their story, that you're a graduate, you're going to be graduating this upcoming spring. You're going to be graduating with a degree in sales and marketing, and you would like to get the story of the director of sales and how they ended up being the director of sales and marketing at XYZ company. I want to take them out to lunch. I want to take them out to lunch and get their story. That's all I want. Well, you know what? A lot of executive assistants are going to go, well, this is pretty gutsy of a student to do this. So I'm going to let them through. I'm going to let them through to the director of sales or chief marketing officer. And then you tell them the same thing. I would like to buy you lunch. I'm researching different people and companies that I would like to get to know better. I want to interview and talk to executives like yourself who, you know what, I want to find out what decisions you made that were really advantageous to you. If you made mistakes that you think a person like me should avoid. And I don't want it for free. I want to buy you lunch and just get your story at how you became the chief marketing officer at ABC company. Would you be willing to have lunch with me? Now, somebody's going to say no, but somebody's going to say yes, right?
Yeah.
So you go to that lunch, and when you sit down after the introduction, you say, you just say that you give them a little bit of an agenda, right? You say, I was just thinking on my way here, maybe we should start this out as, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. And then I'd like I told you on the phone, I want to get your story about how you became chief marketing officer at ABC company. Would that be okay with you? Ask permission. They're going to say yes.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is in the students, I'll say, I'll guarantee you, this is somebody in this room. This is I'm about to give you your story. You're going to laugh at the end of it because you're going to say, oh my gosh, that's my story. So when you tell your story, you say, you don't have to go back to when you were born. Go back to when you were a senior in high school. When I was a senior in high school, I had to decide where I wanted to go to college. I ended up deciding on the University of Minnesota. And the first, I came for orientation. I loved the campus. It was beautiful. And I really wanted to come to school here. And so the first year, my freshman year, I'll be very candid with you. I kind of got caught up in, being away from home for the first time, not living under my parents' roof, not having those rules and regulations, and getting a little too much into the college scene that first year. And my grades kind of suffered from it. And so after that first year, I kind of figured out that, you know what, it's time for me to get serious here. So I went to talk to one of my advisors, and he said, with your personality traits and so on, and with what I know about you, I think sales and marketing is an area you should really look at. You should talk to some of the professors in that department. So I took that advisor's advice, and I went and I talked to them, and I loved what I was hearing. So I put my nose to the grindstone and got my grade point average up to where it should be. And here I am, a senior now, graduating this spring. And I'm really looking forward to going to work for a company and bringing my talents and benefiting a company like yours or somebody else's with my time and my talents. But you know what? That's enough about me. Tell me, how did you, so you've told your story, right? Setting, I was in high school, complication, got into the college scene, right? Turning point, went and talked to my advisor. Here I am, resolution is here I am today, going to be graduating in the spring. So now you open your ears when you pass that torch to that CMO and you say, that's enough about me. Tell me how you became the CMO at ABC. And then as that CMO is telling their story, because people do not tell their story in that framework, they bounce all over the place. They'll talk a little bit about a turning point, a little bit about their setting, a little bit about the resolution, where they are today, a little bit about the complications they've had. And when they get on the complications, that's where you really want to tell me more about that. Tell me a little bit more about that. How did that make you feel? Really dive, because people want to stay away from the complication, but that's where the meat of their story is, right? So you want to open them up a little bit about that. So as soon as they get done telling their story and pretty much are done telling their story, you say to them, well, if I get you, This is where you started. Now you've put all that information in the correct bucket, if you will, right? The correct category.
By
And
listening.
you tell their story back to them in a very organized fashion. This is where you started. These are some of the complications. This is some decisions you made that helped you get to where you are today. And now you're the CMO, and this is what you're looking forward to doing over the next 5 to 10 years. Did I get you? And you know what that person's going to say to you? They're going to say, how'd you do that?
Or wow. Or
how did you just tell me? You listened so well that you told me my story back to me better than I told it to you. How'd you do that? And by the way, you wouldn't happen to have a resume on it, would you? And you're going to say, by chance, yes, I do. Right?
It just so happens. Yeah.
Just so happens that I'm prepared with a resume as well. See, we don't get listened to at that level, right? We don't. And I've had students use this and be successful with it and come back.
I'm sure
this stuff worked. This worked.
Yeah.
I was on a Zoom call. A friend of mine, a business partner of mine, was introducing me to another person for the first time. My business partner knew that. So this works over Zoom too. This was a Zoom meeting.
Sure.
He introduced me to this person. She's in the financial services industry. She's a financial services professional. She oversees about 10 or 11 people that report to her. And so my business partner said to her, why don't you tell Rob your story? Well, she talked for about 8 to 10 minutes telling her story. And my business partner said, well, now I'm going to do something and Rob doesn't know I'm going to do this. Rob, why don't you tell her story back and tell her what you heard as to her story? Well, now, because I've done it so much in so much repetition, I just automatically listen like that. Mm-hmm. And so I said, well, if I get you started here, here's where some of the challenges, got to the end. And I said, did I get you? And she kind of leaned into the camera like that. And she said, when's your next workshop? I said, excuse me? She goes, when's your next workshop? I want to learn, how did you do that? I want to learn how you did that. Because I didn't see you did you take any notes? And I said, no, I didn't take any notes. How did you remember all that? I want to learn, when's your next workshop? I want to learn how to do that. So again, how do you want to influence somebody? Well, how did I influence that person? I listened. She was ready to buy right then just because I listened to her. Mm-hmm. And I understood her story and I got her. She felt gotten and she felt listened to. So it's such a powerful tool when you know how to listen to somebody, but it takes going through and understanding the different elements and where the emotions are and how to tie into those emotions. Because we're emotional animals.
Right.
Human beings are emotional. We have to, if we do everything on a logic, we're not logic-based only animals, right?
Right.
It's got to be a combination of logic and emotion. And if you leave one or the other out, you're going to lose. Mm-hmm. So there's a way to tie that all in and make sure that you're not going overboard in one and not paying enough attention to the other.
Yeah. Let me see if I got this now. There are 4 stages or 4 steps you're saying to learning to tell not only your story, but another person's story back to them by, number 1, by listening. There's setting, then the complication, and then the turning point, and everybody's always like waiting for that, and the resolution. So if you can learn to set up those 4 things and start with yourself, then you can learn to do that for your company or the individual that you're meeting with.
Absolutely. And, I'll never forget the first time I used this. I was interviewing a gentleman about his business. And I literally asked him those 4 questions. The first question I asked him was, tell me about starting your own business. What was going on in your life when you decided to start your own business? Mm-hmm. Well, of course, he bounced all over the place. And then when I wanted to move on to when I wanted to move the conversation along, mm-hmm. I said, well, tell me about some of the challenges you had in growing your business. What were some of the big hurdles and, walls that you had to either, go over or under or through get your business growing? Well, I had this challenge, and again, bounced all over. Well, what were some of the decisions? The third question is, well, what do you think some of the decisions or events that took place to really help you get your business into the growth mode? And so he talked again. And then the last question was, well, where are you today, and where do you hope to go, over the next 3 to 5 years? I asked him 4 questions, those 4 questions. And we talked for a half an hour. His name is Kent. And so I got to the end of that, and I said, Kent, well, if I get you, and I gave him his story back. And I said, Kent, did I get you? And there was a silence on the other end of the phone for about 7 or 8 seconds. And he said, Rob? I said, yeah. How the hell did you do that? And I said, do what? He said, you just took a half-hour conversation with me. You boiled it down into less than 2 minutes. You gave it back to me better than I gave it to you. And most importantly, Rob, you did not miss anything. How did you do that? That's when the light bulb went off in my head, saying, wow, this is powerful. That's when you want to make a connection, when you want to influence somebody, when you want to gain trust, rapport, it's these.
Yeah.
It's these, and learning how to draw that out of them where they go, man, I didn't ever expect to expose that much, but this person was just so easy to talk to. Because here's a conversation, Marty, I will guarantee you has never taken place in the history of mankind.
Oh, boy.
Here's a conversation, and think about that. Since the caveman days that we talked about earlier, all the way to today, September 21st, 2021, here's a conversation that's never taken place in the history of mankind. Nobody has ever gone home to a spouse or significant other or said to a friend, I had a salesperson in my office today, and I kicked them out of my office because all they did was listen to me. They listened so well that I finally got annoyed with them, and I had to kick them out of my office. That's never happened, right? But if you take the word listening and you replace it with talking, that conversation's happened millions of times over the history of mankind.
And that one thing that you just said, Rob, is why there's such a negative aspect that's perceived about sales, because people on the receiving end, all they know is that this person talks continually. They won't give me a chance. Yeah, that's powerful stuff. I tell you, it is this secret sauce of yours. And then the 4 aspects of that curve. Wow, it's not only for students, it's for anybody who wants to learn to be a better salesperson. It's powerful.
And it is powerful. And I think we're all in sales. Dan Pink wrote a book a number of years ago, To Sell is Human, with the premise that, hey, if you're a human being, you're in sales. And if you think about it, we're all in sales because sales is influence, nothing more, nothing less, right? You don't have any authority over your clients. However, if you're a leader in a company and you are leading by simply using what I call your authority card, and that's it. Yeah. Hey, you'll do what I tell you to do because I'm the CEO or I'm the director of this department. I'm in charge of your annual review. That's the lowest form of influence that there possibly is. That will guarantee you that you will get out of people just enough for them to keep their jobs. That's all it's going to do.
Right.
So when it comes to influence, story is a great way to do it. And if you're a leader, you should have stories about, strategy stories, why the people should follow your strategies, the company story that we talked about. And leaders, to me, should have I am human stories. What makes you lead the way you lead, and why that is so important. And I love the I am human stories because they're so powerful as well, to get people to follow your lead voluntarily without having you say, you know what, you have to because I told you so, basically, right? Even parents, for parenting, being able to tell stories. It's a much better way to influence no matter who you're trying to influence. Sales is one aspect of it, and it really will make you a better salesperson. There's no question about that, but it'll make you a better friend. It'll make you a better son, daughter, husband, wife, father, mother. It will make you better throughout your entire life.
A better person. Yeah. Hey, Rob, this has just been fabulous. I was just looking at the time and I realized that we're kind of coming up on the end here. Thank you again for sharing your secret sauce. Listening is so important, and I hope that many people will listen to us today and to this podcast. It's going to be over on YouTube, and there'll be a link on the Sales Education Foundation website as well. So, Rob, thank you so much. It's been a great conversation, and I did a lot of listening.
Thanks, Marty. Appreciate it.
All right. We'll see you next time.
All righty.
Okie doke.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.